Hey y'all, it's Christy Cook from Teadoddles. Today, it's time for another Tutorial Tuesday, and I thought that I would talk to y'all today about using yarn and fabric together. I've been doing a series of yarn art trees. It's time to do my last one for fall, so I can make my little banner that I want to make, and I thought I'd give you some tips for using yarn in a different way, because I do love yarn and I do love fabric, so combining the two is just the best thing for me. So I'll go ahead and show you. The first one I did was my winter tree. This is what I'll be talking about today. Get close up on it. And I did do a blog post on all of these. I will put links down below. On this one, because it was winter and the leaves are gone off the tree and everything, I did thread sketching for these smaller limbs. I really wanted to see all the limbs in the tree. And then I added some fuzzy yarns and stuff for moss and things at the base. I did some free motion quilting at the bottom for pebbling. It's actually not that hard to combine yarn and fabric. I pretty much just laid it on there, and I did a small zigzag stitch, a slanted zigzag stitch, and I just kept adding stuff and stitching, and then I went back and did the little stick, the little individual with the machine. So and the next one I did was my spring tree, and I always think about cherry blossom trees in the spring. So this one's a little different. You can see I did some free motion quilting for some grass. And then on this one, I tied little knots in the yarn to kind of make tree knots. And I did something a little different with this one. I put all the stems in, or the tree branches in, and then I just snipped a bunch of different colored pink and colorful yarns on top of it, and then I layered it with something called sulky. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. It's made by, well, it's made by Sulky. It's called Solvy. It's water soluble stabilizer, and it kind of looks like plastic wrap, but it doesn't stick to itself, just like this. Yeah. And it's basically, I can use it for embroidery and stuff like that. But for this, I layered it over and pinned around the edges to keep stuff from falling out. And then I just free motion quilted until I thought I had everything sewn down. And that's all I did for that one. And then, snap that, it'll be really loud. So then next was my summer tree. And I really love this fabric I use. It's like a ombre dyed fabric. I don't know. It's in the blog post. I can't remember. But I did this one. I did the top very similar to the one I just showed you. Except I didn't put branches up in it. I just put the different greens. And the bottom, I did like the squiggly, because if you've ever seen a lot of trees by water, their roots tend to go out kind of like that, because they're in the water all the time. They're not in the ground. So that was the effect I was going for, like a tree in the water for my summer tree. So that's my summer tree. So now the only one I'm missing is my fall tree. So I was going to talk a little bit about the process I go through to make these. I'm using another end of this same ombre fabric for my fall tree. It's the lighter end of it. So what I first do is I measure out the size that I wanted. And you'll notice I have all the corners cut off of these. That wasn't going to be my intent in the beginning. The very first one I made, I had to cut it off because there was a chunk missing out of the fabric I had made. So I said, well, I'll do them all like that, and then I'll put little corners on them when I make my banner. So that's a happy mistake. So the first thing I do is iron out my fabric, and I put it over some This is 100% cotton batting. You could really use whatever batting you wanted, but I recommend a thinner batting like this or the 80/20 cotton poly. It's just a thinner batting, and it's easier to manipulate under the machine. And then I'll start, sometimes I sketch a tree on here, but half the time I don't stick with that sketch, so I've stopped doing that. But I knew which yarn I was going to use for my fall tree, and that's this yarn here. Let's see if this will focus on that. Probably not, but this is like a fun, I got a big bag of this. I just pulled a big wad of it out of the bag. It's got some green in it too. I'll be just using the yellow portion, but it has, you see, it's got like this on one side, and then this is actually hanging on the other side. It's going to be perfect for my fall tree because yellow is one of my favorite colors to see in the fall. I have a pomegranate bush out front, and its leaves turn a bright yellow in the fall or just before winter. So it's really beautiful, and this color reminds me of that. Because for this one, since I'm thinking about my pomegranate bush, it's not technically a tree, but it kind of looks like a tree. So I'll probably, plus there's another bush that has it's bright yellow that I like. It's called a witch hazel bush. Like, it's what they make witch hazel out of, basically. It has beautiful flowers on it, actually, in the winter. But I'm just using this, I don't know, this is some kind of acrylic yarn. I have no idea what it is. I got it out of my little scrap bucket here, which is where I put pieces of yarn that are left over. And I'm thinking about incorporating some of this, which is a mohair from Lion Brand. I'm actually using it in a coat I'm going to make, which I haven't got to start yet, but this was left over from where I wound the two together. So normally I start by doing this, the trunk and the branches first, okay? Now, because this is got this side here, I'm gonna lay these and kind of fold it so that each half lays on it. I know, I'm doing a great job. It'll be something like this, because I'll be laying these edges on top of each other, so they'll serve as my branch. And then for the bark, I'm probably going to put this in with the bark, just because I like that little bit of texture in there and that fuzz. And I'm gotta change my camera around, but I'm gonna show you how I just lay this out, and I cut it, and I kind of get enough, and then sometimes I'll take it with me to the machine and just stitch, so I can add some if I want to. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you can't really pin this. You can try, but there's so many pins because it's yarn on fabric. You can use the sulky to cover it up and then stitch on top of that, and it'll help hold it in place. I just have found that laying out some and going to my machine and sewing it and then seeing what it looks like and adding some works the best for me. So this yarn right here, I have a huge bag of it. It was one of those $5 bags of yarn from Joann's you find sometimes that has no label. I've never used it for anything else but this. That's a row of it right there. And there's a little framed weaving I did. And there is a blog post about this. It's really easy to do. I stapled the ends and cut them after I was done. And in the beginning, I used little mini eye hooks. I don't know if you see it. Yeah. That's what I looped them through. And I used staples in some cases too. To lay out the gray thread with my to weave my other threads in, and then I just stuck peacock feathers at the top bottom because I like the way it looked. But I'll link to that blog post too. But this is the only other thing I've used this for. I can't imagine crocheting anything with this. I think it would be a pain in the butt, honestly. But it's useful for other things. So think about that sometimes when you see that fun yarn out there, because that is, it's not always something fun to crochet with, but it can be used for other things. And another tip I got for y'all today. See this little mini vacuum cleaner? Has a USB plug on it. Because I just used it to vacuum dust off of that. Because it's a fabric wall art. And, you know, it gets dusty and you can't clean it. It's not like you get the one in the washing machine. Or use a regular duster on it or whatever. But this little thing works great for that. So, I recommend this little diddly bob. I'm going to turn it on so you can hear what it sounds like. Or maybe I'm not because it's unplugged. Yeah, I just did that. Anyway, this is a really handy little thing. It does pretty good. You can see the dust inside there. So, it's great for things like that because the suction is not huge. So it won't mess up your fabric art. But it will help get that dust and dog hair off of it. So, that's my other tip for now. So, I'm fixing to change this around. And I'll be back in just a minute. Alright, I'm back. Hopefully y'all can see this well. I had to grab. I really should have had scissors before. I can show you what I do. It's not rocket science, y'all. I'm taking these two yarns I want to use together. I'm going to lay one out. I'm going to cut it. Right? And I'm just going to keep doing that until I have something I like. And usually I think about what I want it to look like in the beginning. And then it kind of does what it wants to as I start laying things out. Since I'm planning on... Let's grab this. Since I'm planning on laying this out kind of like this, I probably will lay, once I sew this down, I'll probably lay some of this over it to cover up some of the blue, just because, you know, tree trunks aren't usually blue. But they're not always brown either, but that's besides the point. Anyway, I think I'm going to do a fairly narrow one that kind of just goes out. I really want a lot of that fluff on there. And when I start sewing this down, it'll be, it'll change. You know, I'll see if I want to add more, if I want to be like, no, I want less. So if you really want some roots going on there, you just kind of lay it out like that. Yeah. This is actually really fun for me to do because it's like a freeform thing. I don't have to think about a pattern. I just kind of move it around and play with it till it gets the way I like it. And my pomegranate bush has a bunch of stems that grow out like this. So I'm trying to make it look more like a tree trunk. And I kind of like the way that looks so far. I think I'll add a few more on top of things. Because once I sew this down, it's going to flatten out a lot. And you don't want to put too much on there because when you sew, once it's flattened down, it's easier to sew over than it is sewing over a bunch of thread. Or yarn, not thread. Alright, so I really like the way that looks. So I'm going to take it over here and zigzag it, and then I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. Okay, I'm back, y'all. I've sewn down my trunk. I did leave some gaps in this one. I just like the way it looks. I like this little curvy bit here. Trees are not always symmetrical. Or, well, they're rarely symmetrical. And this is my own tree. So, I'll give you, see it, can you see? Focus on it. Well, I was trying to show you that I used green, a darker green thread to stitch this down. it is, like I said, I did a slanted zigzag stitch. I find that that works better than a regular zigzag stitch because it's narrower for the yarn. And I did not sew over everything. There's some loose bits in here. It gives it more texture. And all this will get trimmed up whenever I finish. So that's what I usually start with. It's the trunk. Sometimes I do branches if I want branches to show. In this case, I'm going to be kind of using this for branches and then adding some more of this brown on top of it. So now I'm going to start placing branches, and it's not going to take very much of this because this is such a fluffy yarn. And I have to be careful because I don't want to go past my edges because I have a certain, this is a slightly bigger than the size that I'm going to cut it finally. Because when you start stitching and all that, it can draw up some. Had to grab my scissors. But, so I'm just going to cut this. I'm overlapping it with the trunk some. So it blends in better. Then I'm going to take a piece. This is my plan anyway, to get the kind of leaves going both ways. Whoop, let go. I'm going to overlap that. Just so. And y'all, I use a 9014 universal needle when I do this, because I'm going through all kinds of different materials, and I find that that just works the best. And I don't have to worry about it breaking most of the time. You just have to watch where you've gone over repeatedly, and when you add more thread, and you may need to go slower to keep that from happening. Alright, so let's see. Dun, 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 dun. And I may need, you know, I'm probably going to have to, you know, I don't like that overlapped like that now. I think it'll look better if I just do some going one way, some going the other way. Let's see. I don't have to have it in a straight line. I can really feel this in. So it's a nice fluffy tree. Yeah. I'm kind of digging that blue now. I kind of like that. So now I just have to stitch it down. So I'm going to take it over here. I'll be using that zigzag stitch again. I'm going to change the color to something closer to this yellow probably. And you see how this is kind of tucked under there? I'll probably fluff this all out and just sew along this edge so I don't sew over any of this portion, so it keeps it nice and fluffy. So I'll be back again in a minute. Alright, I'm back. And look! I love how this turned out. This was super easy to do compared to some of the other ones. Got some little threads in here, but that's okay. Can snip those away. I actually used, and you're going to be able to see it right here, but this is going to fluff out and you can't see all that. So I used a regular zigzag on this because it was wider, because I had this double edge on this yarn. But when I fluff it over and everything, you can't even see that. So since it's going to be a wall hanging and not something somebody's going to be, you know, laying on or whatever, it fluffs out really nice. And I love the way it leaned. I leaned everything that way. I decided not to go out this other way. So when I trim this, I'm just going to, I'll probably cut off any extra down here. And I'm going to lay this right on top of here in this corner. So I'll be using that top edge, and it will cut off a good little bit of my roots, but I really would rather have all of this. Well, let's see. This can hang over the edge if I want to, so I could come down just a little bit so I don't lose so much of my roots. Yeah, this is my really scientific method for making sure this one's the same size. No, I'm not going to do that, because you know how this is puffed up. This will never be the same size. that was just a test fit, y'all. I'm going to put this right here. This is so wrinkly because I had to wash off the sulky and let it air dry. So let me try one that's actually been ironed and such. Let's see. This is about 7.5 by 10. 7.5 by 10, right? So there, I know how big to cut. So push this up some. So again, I don't know. It's right here. Okay, it's on. Go. Go up. Alright, got this thing all trimmed up just like my other blocks. So let's see how they look together, if we can get them all in here. Got spring, summer. I'm gonna push this up. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. Spring, summer, fall, winter. There we go. I've got them all done. And I've already picked out some colors for my corners. So let's see how that looks. That was what I wanted for this one. Well, I'm gonna try to cut this so that that bird shows in that little corner of that one. And oh, I got so much stuff on this table, it's ridiculous. This is just a really rough layout. I may change these. I like the little scrappiness in the corners though. So, that's kind of what I'm planning on doing for the corners. Let me swap these two. Like that a little bit better. And then I'm going to put, those won't be right beside each other anyway. So I'm planning on putting this in between. I just got to see what size I can get out of this to get all the way around the border and then make my whole wall hanging. But I'm not going to show you how to do all that today, but you can check out blog posts I'm going to link for how I did all of these. And then hopefully I have a link to a post for this one with and have it sewn together. We'll see how that goes. But my main thing is don't be afraid to try sewing. It's all made of fiber, so it will sew on there. You know, don't worry about bits sticking up. That gives it the most texture you want. If you know how to use a sewing machine, you could do this. It's not super hard actually. If y'all have any questions about it or want to know more about it, how I do these things, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. But I hope y'all enjoyed this little tutorial, and I will see y'all on Saturday for my podcast. Oh, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing. I always forget about that stuff, y'all. See y'all next time.